Hello there, and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. I am Vlad, and today we are doing season 15, episode 18, hopefully, because this one is recorded a couple of weeks before it actually gets published. It's under embargo, it's super secret so far. So I get some very special information about which you're going to know when it's released. The project is called Citrea or Citrea. And it's about zero knowledge proofs and rollups and all of this very, how should I put it, outlandish stuff for Bitcoin, something that maybe you haven't heard about. And today we're going to talk with Orkun Kılıç, who is the CEO and co-founder of the Citrea project, Citrea. I guess we haven't settled yet how we're going to refer to that going forward, but it's super avant-garde. It makes use of BitVM, it makes use of inscriptions, and it does something that's similar with sidechains. So we're in for a lot of fun. Welcome, Orkun.
Yeah. Hi, Vlad. It is great to be here and great to speak with you.
Yes, sir. This season, I think, has been the most avant-garde in terms of presenting stuff that's coming to Bitcoin. You're going to launch this in early February.
Yes, correct.
It's the first, as far as I know, implementation of zero-knowledge rollups on Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's also correct.
Okay, so let's first of all, should we talk about rollups? Let's talk about rollups first. So what is a rollup and what are zero-knowledge proofs and why do you put them together?
Yes, that's cool. So Citrea, like you said, is the first rollup on Bitcoin that targets to enhance the capabilities of Bitcoin block space using zero-knowledge technology. When we say rollups, we are talking about on-chain layer 2s. We say the actual layer 2s that scales to on-chain, because all the components of rollups that we will talk about and we are implementing is living inside the Bitcoin blockchain. It doesn't live next to Bitcoin blockchain, or it doesn't live on top of, maybe you can say. It exactly lives in the Bitcoin blockchain. That is why we are saying rollups are the most secure L2s. And zero-knowledge rollups are a special category of rollups that you can prove validity of transactions with zero-knowledge technology. So every transaction occurring on this rollup is validated by zero-knowledge proofs. There's a couple of provers that proves the validity of the transactions, and then the underlying layer and all the nodes in the network validates these zero-knowledge proofs to make sure that these transactions are totally valid and it lives inside the Bitcoin blockchain.
Okay, you described how this works, but essentially what is a rollup?
Okay, rollup is a system that uses the same block space with the underlying L1, but it makes use of the block space much more efficiently so that it can fit multiple transactions in it.
So it's like batching?
Yes, it basically rolls up every L2 transaction in a single batch and put it into an efficient form using zero-knowledge technology, then put the data on the underlying blockchain. So it basically shards the execution from underlying blockchain using zero-knowledge or fraud proofs, but it still keeps all the data and validity inside the L1, inside the main blockchain.
So why do people compare this to a sidechain? Because sidechains are usually about locking funds on the base layer and issuing them on another chain.
I think that's because of so far Bitcoin doesn't see any valid rollups that actually works on Bitcoin because of the limitations of the Bitcoin script. But since we have inscriptions, inscriptions were possible since day one, but this opens great discussions about rollups, like sovereign rollups, which we can still talk about. But with the BitVM, we can now talk about the rollups. But why people compare these two? Because they think that layer 2s are rollups and sidechains, they are all layer 2. However, sidechains are not an examples of layer 2s, because sidechains are basically separate chains that you can do some transactions with, maybe much more cheaper than the main chain, or you can do, for example, EVM or other VMs. However, it is a totally different security assumption, because once you move your BTC to another sidechain, then you are trusting that sidechain to never store your money. This is both valid for the sidechains operation, like sidechains miners, stakers, nodes, and as well as the bridge between the main chain and the sidechain. But rollups are not work like that. You basically embed everything into L1, so they don't have any consensus. They share the same consensus with the L1, so that without stealing the L1's money, you cannot steal the money on the L2. This is totally different than sidechains.
And where does the zero knowledge proof scheme come into play?
So while you are doing rollup, currently you have two paths. You will either assume every transaction correct until it gets challenged, or you will prove every transaction with zero knowledge proofs so that you know they are valid since day zero. There are several trade-offs. For example, optimistic rollups dump all the transaction data to the L1 and wait 7 days to settle. So that in 7 days, if you can realize any invalid transaction of that data, that you can put a fraud proof to the on-chains and you can say, okay, this transaction is invalid and this operator is trying to steal user funds. This is optimistic rollup. So everything is correct until it gets challenged. And the ZK rollups are proves everything while they are done on the L2. And L1 only has single succinct ZK proof with a data that we call state.Diff, which is the data that's outputted by the ZK proofs natively. And it is much more efficient in terms of data usage. And you know that Bitcoin block space is pretty limited, so we need to use the block space efficiently. So ZK rollups does that. And also they don't have any 7-day settlement period because they are instantly finalized, because you can see the proof, you can verify the proof, and which means that this is also finalized with the L1 itself. You don't have to wait any other days.
I gotta ask you, Orkun, at this point, because I purposely let you explain this stuff before I allowed you to introduce yourself and your background. But all of this sounds very esoteric for the world of Bitcoin, which until a couple of years ago has been only about sidechains and layer 2s like Lightning. And the expectation was that this was good enough, and it proved not to be good enough, or at least not enough. And now we're in this quest for more layer 2s. And it seems like you're importing something from Ethereum, because that's where they were very bullish on zero knowledge proofs being used for scalability. That's where they were using this term of optimism and optimistic, which means that it's trust minimized and it's enforced by cryptography. And I gotta ask you, what's your background and how did you come up with this?
Yeah, before going to my background, maybe I can say something on the Ethereum importance. The zero knowledge proofs are discussed by Satoshi itself in 2010 in the Bitcoin forum. He mentioned that maybe you can make the blockchain succinct enough with zero knowledge proof so that you don't need to scan every block one by one. Or there are so many people on Bitcoin forum talk about zero knowledge proofs with their both scalability aspect and privacy aspect. So I would say it is not something new from Ethereum ecosystem. It was in the Bitcoin ecosystem since day zero, but we couldn't find any way to implement it properly until today. And on the optimistic side, it is also tricky because there's something called justice transaction in Lightning. You know that. This is essentially a fraud proof. That is the optimistic case because some party closes the channel and you wait some blocks, and in that blocks you can put a fraud proof on chain like a justice transaction, and you can maybe slash the counterparty. And this is also optimistic scenario. So there are not new terms to Bitcoin, but rollup itself is okay. I can accept that it is something originated from Ethereum, and right now we are building it on Bitcoin. Then I can talk about myself. I am the CEO of Chainway Labs, which incubates and builds Citrea right now. Before Citrea, we built several privacy projects on EVM ecosystems, and also we built an Ordnance wallet. In the early days of Ordnance, we were the second wallet that supports Ordnance fully. Then while we are doing that, we realized that, okay, we know zero knowledge very well, we know Bitcoin script in terms of Bitcoin very well. What if we can do a roll-up on Bitcoin? So we started researching around a year ago, and we have a pretty young and dynamic team that's maybe 3 people in our team has international Olympiad medalists, and some of them are second or third, or even we have first in my co-founders in the national exam and stuff. Even though we are a young team, we are pretty experienced on engineering, and we are pretty smart on zero knowledge, I can say. So we started building the rollup. We architected rollup in the first place as a sovereign rollup, which only used Bitcoin for data availability, but settlement and verification happens off-chain among the nodes until BitVM. And once we discovered BitVM and the potential of it, we started building a ZK proof verifier on the BitVM, and right now we are here.
Interesting. So for how long have you been working on Bitcoin?
I would say before Chainmail Labs, my co-founders and I had several experiences on Bitcoin. We haven't built any product on Bitcoin, but we did some open source development. During the early days of college, we did some projects, but we haven't built any product until the ordinals came, because we that date we were pretty interested in zero-knowledge proofs and their applications, but we didn't realize the potential of Bitcoin to implement these zero-knowledge proofs. I can say maybe over a year, we got interested in ordinals, build a product, and realized that we can build a rollup on Bitcoin, and we started building a rollup on Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think half of my audience thinks that ordinals are a disease or a bug or something that needs to be stopped. And I've read lots of opinions on Twitter with people like Luke Dash Jr. and Giacomo Zucco. They think we should turn off somehow either filter or unfork SegWit or whatever, or at least remove the witness discount. But it seems like this ordinal inscription creation did not just lead to people putting their JPEGs on the chain. Seems like you figured out something that's a legit scaling use case.
I would say putting JPEGs on chain is also a legit use case, because it is permissionless development, and what Casey did really cyberpunk, and he used the power of Bitcoin blocks chain to import something novel that you can embed any data. It is not all about JPEGs, like you said, but it started some light. We are from Istanbul, Turkey. All of my team is here, and we onboarded several developers to ordinals that they developed lots of indexers, lots of marketplaces maybe. This increases the developer count on Bitcoin. This is essentially whether we are inscribing some data, whether we are inscribing some JSON, it makes the innovation happen. Because before that, there was no big innovations, I can say. There were, of course, innovations on Bitcoin, but inscriptions are accelerating factor for that. And before the inscriptions, it were always possible to embed data on Bitcoin. And witness discount this is also something I can argue, because if you remove the witness discount or you try to ban inscriptions using mempool policies, people will use much worse ways to embed data to Bitcoin that is unprunable, that creates some kind of spam on UTXO set. But I think this will spur the innovation. We will get through these phases, BRC20s, marketplaces, and essentially we will find a novel way that we can use these inscriptions like the rollups.
So you're saying that all of this stuff led to an actual layer 2 for scaling, which is zero-knowledge rollups?
Yes, I can say not only zero-knowledge rollup, that is why we are building, but there are lots of other things that is still undiscovered on Bitcoin, and I think inscriptions can accelerate the development on that also.
Wasabi likes big coin joins. We do big coin joins over here.
Oh yeah.
The largest Wasabi coin join happened on White Paper Day, October 10th, 2022, with 400 inputs and 412 outputs. A total of 127.9 Bitcoin got made fungible in a single transaction. That's a mega coin join. Let's make the next coin joins even bigger. Let's make the next coin joins even mega-rarer. We like big things. We like big coin joins. Wasabi puts big coin joins into small blocks.
This is very good, actually. Yeah. I noticed that on your Twitter profile, you have this description that we should activate CTV. And I was wondering if your rollup system would benefit from CTV in any way, or covenants or whatever.
Mhm. In the current architecture of ours, we don't need any consensus changes with BitVM. But for example, CTV or any covenant, I can say like TXH really improves between maybe 10x or 100x, because right now in the current scenario, for example, we have static set of verifiers and verifiers. But with some sort of covenants, we can make this set dynamic so that you can join, you can verify the blockchain, verify the peg yourself without maybe trusting to the n members of the committee. So CTV and some sort of covenant improve that, as well as improving the pre-signed transaction data that we need to hold on somewhere off chain. It really compresses all the data we need to sign. And also CAT is, I think, it is trivial, like we need to enable CAT. We didn't... It is good to have this kind of discussions, but it is some like 10 lines of code that enables lots of cool things on Bitcoin. And I fully support that, this kind of, any kind of covenant that can help Bitcoin to improve non-custodial BTC holding and also programmability, as well as this also includes CAT.
That part about non-custodial onboarding and scaling it is music to my ears, believe me. I've seen so many discussions about ETFs being a good way for institutions and a way for speculators and lazy people who don't care about self-custody. And it seems like the culture of Bitcoin, at least on Twitter, has gone to this capitulation moment where we almost forgot why we got into this. And I'm always happy to discover that new stuff makes it easier and more convenient to self-custody your coins. So honestly, thank you for pursuing this research.
Yeah, and some people said like ETFs are L2s and some sort of stuff. ETFs are just a regulated way to hold BTC. And if I like, okay, it might be kind of like US thing, but if I'm some sort of citizen that wants to buy BTC, why should I buy it custodial or using some ETF? And that is the whole point of Bitcoin, that I can non-custody my BTC.
Yeah, and I think now is the right time to talk about Citrea or Citrea. Can you tell me how you pronounce this?
It's Citrea.
Citrea. It's Citrea. And
correct.
The website, I guess I can mention it because by the time I publish this, it will be out.
Yes, correct.
It's Citrea.xyz. And if you want to read the documentation, and right now I'm looking at the docs, it's docs.Citrea.xyz. I'm going to put the links in the description of the YouTube video.
Okay.
And in the TLDR section, which stands for too long didn't read, it says Citrea is the first rollup that enhances the capabilities of Bitcoin block space with zero-knowledge technology, making it possible to build everything on Bitcoin. This requires no changes to the network's consensus rules. Citrea is a Type 2 ZK EVM. And I was going to get to this. What is a Type 2 ZK EVM?
Okay, that's something for EVM nerds and the EVM developers. So EVM stands for Ethereum Virtual Machine. And our rollup employs Ethereum Virtual Machine because we believe that Ethereum Virtual Machine is like alive around, I think, 9 years or 10 years. And it has proven to have like, it underwent lots of audits. The smart contracts on it underwent lots of audits, and it secures billions of dollars on other EVM chains. So we believe that employing those kind of VM is critical for the security of the rollup and the infrastructure that we provide. But in order to make EVM work in zero-knowledge rollup, we need to make EVM provable, which means that every code running on EVM must produce a zero-knowledge proof. In order to do that, you have several ways, which classified by the creator of EVM, Vitalik Buterin. He mentions that there are 4 types of ZK EVM. Some people expand it to the 5, but essentially you can port EVM using like high-level stuff. You can just port the language, but you can change the VM completely to make it provable. This is one way. The other way is just changing some opcodes, making it much more friendly to the ZK, but still not close to the EVM, original EVM. And our implementation is fully compatible with the EVM, which means that now that you have some application on Ethereum that you can borrow some money using Ethereum as collateral, that means that you can copy that app, you can put it into Citrea, then it will work as is. So you can now borrow USDT using your Bitcoin without selling your Bitcoin. We are targeting full compatibility. That's why we choose to implement Type 2 ZK EVM. And Type 1 is fully Ethereum compatible, which we don't get interested because we are a custom rollup running on Bitcoin, and we don't want to inherit all the unnecessary stuff for us. We just implemented all the core functionality of the EVM using zero-knowledge proofs.
Okay, someone who doesn't understand what you just said and just picks some keywords that are like a dog whistle, you know, they're gonna say, oh, you're trying to bring Ethereum to Bitcoin.
We are only bringing EVM to Bitcoin, which we find it fascinating because it enables lots of applications. Like right now, the TVL on Ethereum, I don't know the exact number, but it is really high. And on Bitcoin, we have lots of liquidity that stands in people's pocket, non-custodial or custodially. And we want to enable that for people that wants to use that Bitcoin in a financial environment without using any custodial solution. That's why we are bringing EVM for our rollup, and our architecture is pretty modular, and I can say we can implement lots of VMs in the future, like Wasm VM or any other blockchains VM that can be ZK friendly. So we are not trying to put Ethereum on Bitcoin. We are not trying to pull Ethereum to Bitcoin. We are creating something novel for Bitcoin and BTC, and we are doing it non-custodial. That is the important part.
Yeah. In the second part of your TLDR section on the documentation website, it says that Citrea proofs are inscribed in Bitcoin and verified in Bitcoin via BitVM. Anyone running a Bitcoin node can both verify Citrea and access to its full state. This method ensures that data needed to transact on Citrea or verify Citrea becomes permissionlessly available for every single node in the Bitcoin network. The proof inscribed in Bitcoin is optimistically verified in Bitcoin as well, thanks to BitVM. So basically, instead of inscribing JPEGs, you send zero-knowledge proofs. You send the hash of the zero-knowledge proof.
No, we are just sending the pure zero-knowledge proof, because sending only the hash doesn't help you with anything. You need to find the original zero-knowledge proof somewhere. And if you don't have some strong Bitcoin, like there's no blockchain that is strong publishing guarantees as Bitcoin, you cannot find the data if you only inscribe the hash. There's a chance that you couldn't find the data. But we are inscribing the full data on Bitcoin. So if you have a Bitcoin node running in your home, you can trustlessly verify Citrea using the zero-knowledge proofs living inside your machine.
That's interesting. I was just thinking right now, what's the size of these zero-knowledge proofs that are going to be inscribed?
Zero-knowledge proof size is not that big. I think we can, if we compress it to the gross 16 proof, that is something also ZK proof type. It is under a kilobyte, but if you put it into the pure form, it is around 50 kilobytes. But the most important part is the data part of the proof. So in order to access the blockchain state, you need to have the blockchain data, right? If we put it into somewhere off-chain, then people need to create some other peer-to-peer network access to that data. And this is also the different security assumption. So we are also inscribing the blockchain data to Bitcoin, which is the heaviest part. And we are using state differences, which is a special architecture that it executes every single block, and it creates data that shows the difference between the previous state and the latest state. So it is efficient, but it is still big, and the data is pretty like it goes sublinearly with the transaction count. So if you transact more, it will get cheaper. Data will be more compressed. But if there is no transaction, data will be a little bit big. But if we support like tons of times of Bitcoin's TPS, it will be around 1 megabyte for every 10 minutes or so, uncompressed. If you compress it, it will be around 30 kilobytes or something.
That's interesting. Yeah. So it means you can fit like 300, 400 of them in a Bitcoin block, assuming that it's around 1 megabyte and a bit more with SegWit.
With SegWit, we have like 4 megabyte space, and we don't need to like separate all this proof. If we can batch them together, we can compress even more, so that we can do like tens of times of Bitcoin's TPS on the Citrea, and it will only cover like maybe like less than quarter of the Bitcoin block in 10 minutes.
Okay, so let's also think about the fees. If the size is approximately 50 kilobytes,
Mm-hmm.
and you pay, let's say, 20 units per V-byte, this means you're gonna pay 100,000 units, so 0.001 BTC for that transaction fee.
Yeah,
which
around
right now is like $40.
Mm-hmm. But think it like that. The rollup batches all these transactions, and like you did some transaction, I did some transaction, everyone did some transaction, and a fee grows sublinearly, which means it grows slower than the transaction count. And once you have some fee, like let's say 4,000K, I don't know, it got divided to all the transactions according to their storage change or data size, we can say, basically. So it is divided among all the transaction people. So it got cheaper while if you are continue to use it, for example. This is something we care, actually. I can maybe hop to something that we need to discuss. I'm supporting full blocks on Bitcoin and high fees on Bitcoin because in the long term, this is the only way. Like Bitcoin price must go up. This is the one condition, and the other condition is people need to pay lots of fee to Bitcoin miners to make the system secure and sustainable in the long term. So that is the rollup itself is the most incentive aligned way to do it, because imagine sidechains we talked about. You are moving all the demands to Bitcoin block space. There's some demand on Bitcoin block space. We can see that from the high fee rates, right? If you move all this demand to a sidechain, then they are right now paying fees to the sidechain operators. They are not paying fees to the miners directly. Even though you can like do something like merge mining and stuff, it's still opt-in to the Bitcoin. And after some point, they will become like, it will compete with Bitcoin block space because it's a separate block space. Rollups are incentive aligned with Bitcoin itself because you are paying fees to the rollup, and almost 99% of the fee goes to the Bitcoin itself. So in the long run, it pays lots of fees to the Bitcoin, improves the security and hash rate of the Bitcoin in the long term, while you are benefiting low transaction fees because of the batching and rolling stuff.
So you get this one ZK rollup, which can contain maybe hundreds or thousands of singular Bitcoin transactions. Is that how it works?
It doesn't contain Bitcoin transaction. It has its own custom transaction, which is EVM transactions. But in terms of data, right, there are like maybe 100 kilobytes of data, and you put the data, compress it, and put to the Bitcoin directly. And all the fees collected on the rollup goes to the Bitcoin miners.
Now I'm trying to figure out the scalability benefits and how many transactions can actually be added to the Bitcoin base layer.
Maybe like in a quick math, if you can do like around 100 TPS for 10 minutes, which is really high, non-stop 100 TPS in 10 minutes, it won't ever fill the Bitcoin block. So we can go above the numbers because why I'm saying I'm not talking about exact numbers, because it really depends on the storage slots, because we are using state diffs. Like I said, if you are making separate transactions that touches to the separate storage slots, the data size is huge. But if you are, for example, doing some swap on BTC USDT pair, if everyone does the same transaction, only one of them pays to the fees, or we can say the fee is divided to everyone that does this transaction. So I cannot talk about exact numbers. It won't be as cheap as like some, I don't know, a cent or 5 cents or maybe even 10 cents, but it will be definitely times of cheaper than Bitcoin, and it will be as secure as Bitcoin. That's the important part for us.
CryptoSteel offers a durable, physical backup for cryptocurrency key and recovery words. These user-friendly cold storage devices withstand harsh conditions, including fires, floods, and earthquakes. Made from the finest European stainless steel, they are built to last. Accessible to all and requiring no computer skills, the original CryptoSteel cassette and capsule have been innovating Bitcoin security since 2013. They provide a reliable and robust backup, essential for the safety and longevity of your digital investments. Ideal for protecting your digital wealth. CryptoSteel isn't just a one-trick pony. Of course, it works with your Beep39 seed phrase, but you can also use it for important passwords, Bitcoin core passphrases, Nostr private keys, and much more. Buy your CryptoSteel metal backup today from cryptosteel.com and use promo code BTCTKVR to get a 10% discount. CryptoSteel, secure your Bitcoin like an OG.
I think that's super cool because basically it's, if you were to define it in terms that Bitcoiners already know and understand, it's a more elegant way to batch transactions. And it also has some privacy benefits, right?
I can say in the ZK rollup natively, there is not much privacy benefits because the EVM we are using, EVM is public, like Bitcoin itself. So, but this is something cool. We already have several people that wants to deploy on Citrea that it is EVM and it can verify ZK proofs natively without going through all the BitVM and Bitcoin script stuff. So you can build a private DEX, you can build a private exchange, you can build a private payment application on Citrea that can send Bitcoin privately around. So that can swap Bitcoin with USDT privately. And it will be directly live on Bitcoin because it lives on Citrea, and Citrea lives in Bitcoin, which means that you can implement any privacy application on Citrea using the same level of security with Bitcoin.
That's interesting. What would you say are the trade-offs of this? Are there, I mean, everything has trade-offs, so.
Definitely. So in the current landscape, we are using BitVM, which is like improved maybe 100 or thousands of times than the federations because they require honest majority assumption. But BitVM itself requires trust. It is trust minimized because it requires honest minority. If one of them is honest in the committee, it is secure. That's a good start. But to make it, for example, fully trustless, we need an opcode, which is something like opzkp verifier or op start verifier. If we don't have it, it is trust minimized. If we have it, it is trustless. This is the one trade-off I can say, and the BitVM is not that efficient in the beginning, at least, because it requires some fixed amounts to deposit or requires some large amounts to deposit. It works. There's a huge improvement, but it is not that efficient right now without opcode changes. And the other thing I can say is zero confirmations. Because Bitcoin has like around 10 minutes of block times, the smaller block times on Rollup is trusted to the sequencers or sequencer network. This is almost same with the merge-minded sidechains, but here we have a different trade-off. The sequencers are not cannot publish invalid blocks because they cannot be provable inside the ZKVM. But they can change the ordering of the transaction. They can change the finality before Bitcoin block is mined. In order to prevent this, we are developing a decentralized sequencer network, which will act as a finality layer for the rollup, but it won't change the safety rules because every block published on the network will still undergo to the prover application, and the proof itself will be inscribed on Bitcoin at the end. But in order to reduce the trust assumption on ordering before Bitcoin block is mined, we are developing a sequencer network that can give much less trusted confirmations.
Okay. I mean, it doesn't sound
is it
bad.
Too complicated?
It is complicated, but at the same time, when I say trade-offs, I'm thinking of attack vectors and stuff that can happen that may be unpredictable right now.
Everything using Bitcoin as like source of truth has this kind of trade-off. If it's a universal system, think Arc, the improvement over Lightning Network. It's a great improvement over Lightning Network. It has the same thing. Before 10 minutes, every coin join round happen on the operator is trusted to the operator. They call it ASPs, I think, Arc Service Provider. You are trusting Arc Service Provider to not change the order before the Bitcoin block is mined. This is the same with the rollups, but it is much more easier to mitigate this network. I don't know Arc that much. Maybe they can mitigate this problem, but right now they are the same. But we have a clear plan on the rollup to change this.
Yeah, let's look at the papers, at the documents, and read the next statement, which says that Citrea proofs are inscribed in Bitcoin and verified in Bitcoin via BitVM. I think I read this before.
Yes, we talk about this.
And Citrea supports light nodes. This is the next one. Taking advantage of a recursive zero-knowledge proof system, Starks specifically, Citrea allows easy verification of the blockchain with light nodes. By recursively verifying batch proofs in light proof clients, the full Citrea blockchain shrinks into a small zero-knowledge proof and lives inside Bitcoin. Anyone running Bitcoin Light Node, SPV, can trustlessly verify Citrea and access to its state root.
Yes, that's also something for ZK nerds, but I will try to explain it. So we talked about the proving part, right? We have a batch of transactions. There's some prover, proves the validity of the batch and submits the proof to the Bitcoin. But in order to verify those proofs, you need to scan every single Bitcoin block. You need to have a Bitcoin full node living next to you, and you need to go over the blocks and verify the proofs and verify the validity of the transactions. The blockchain security itself is defined with the decentralization of the blockchain, I can say, is defined with the number of nodes. It has number of validating nodes. And the full nodes are the part of it. And if we can add light nodes, which means that anyone with this phone can verify the proofs and improve the decentralization. In order to make it happen, we need to support light clients, which are the clients that requires almost no storage and no bandwidth. So in order to make this happen, we have a separate prover that goes over the Bitcoin blocks and extract the proofs that is inscribed into Bitcoin and recursively verifies these proofs. So in the end, we have a program that verifies thousands of zero-knowledge proofs inside a zero-knowledge proof. So the end result is just a 50 kilobytes of proof. If you compress it, it is under a kilobyte. We have a kilobyte of data that verifies all the Citrea. And this is something pretty exciting to me. Because using this proof, you can broadcast this proof among a peer-to-peer network. And if you have a smartwatch, you can verify the Citrea. If you have a mobile phone, you can verify the Citrea, even without a limited internet connection and storage. This is something new. Also, this improves BitVM because we are using these proofs in BitVM so that it is much more efficient to use, and fraud proofs are much more smaller.
Okay. So it doesn't sound much like the Electrum SPV. It's more like zero-knowledge proofs SPV. It's slightly different.
Yes,
concept.
it is a zero-knowledge proof SPV. In the regular Bitcoin SPVs, for example, you need to scan only the headers, and you can now verify the transactions using the transaction root field in the header. But Citrea proofs make use of these headers, Bitcoin headers. And also, the whole blockchain is represented as a ZK proofs, so that you can batch them and recursively verify them. And in the end, you have a single proof that validates all the chains since Genesis. So you can put it into some rock, put it into Bitcoin again, put it into some other blockchain. And the other blockchain itself even can verify all the Citrea using this small proof.
Okay, let's talk about the big statement that comes up next on your page. And it says that Citrea has the first universal trust minimized two-way peg. And I'm pretty sure that two-way pegs were attempted before in Bitcoin, but you claim that it's the first one that's universal. And what does this mean?
So in Lightning, we have trust minimized Bitcoin peg, right? Because it is peer-to-peer. We are just lifting our transaction UTXOs and we are exchanging it. So it is peer-to-peer. It is not universal. There is no global state. There is no programmability, I can say. It is trust minimized, but I'm not interested with that. And Arc also has a similar thing. It is trust minimized, but there is no programmability and universal state. So I'm skipping that. And so far, we had only sidechains. We had, for example, rootstock and stacks, I can talk. And in rootstock, the peg is secured by a multisig. The members of multisigs are like public and they are running in a hardware security model, which is pretty great, but it is not trust minimized because you require honest majority assumption on the signers. As far as I remember, there's 9 signers, and you require the majority of the 9 signers are honest. There is nothing minimized here, right? It is an honest majority assumption. And on the stakes, the new upcoming update is SBTC. They now have an open system that is decentralized, which is also pretty good, but it is still not trust minimized because it has honest majority assumption. If you have the 70% threshold of the signers, they can peg in the money, they can peg out the money, they can steal the money. This is honest majority assumption. But with BitVM and zero knowledge proofs, we have honest minority assumption. If only one person in this committee is honest, then peg is secure and Citrea is secure. This is the first time that trust minimized peg is happening on the Bitcoin with a universal L2, which means universal means there is a global state, thus there is a programmability, because without global state, it is hard to have programmability.
Okay.
People don't agree with me on that thing, especially the sidechain builders. But these kind of things are proven that because it is too clear, like there's honest majority assumption, there's honest minority assumption. If you have honest majority assumption, that is not trust minimized. If you have honest minority assumption, you can have trust minimization if you have secure light client like zero knowledge proofs.
I was just thinking that usually the Bitcoin attitude, and last night I had this interview with Paul Stortz. Now you're getting some context as to when this got recorded because it's going to get published in a couple of weeks. And he was still very confident in sidechains, even though I presented to him the idea that rollups might be a novel way of doing something similar and stimulating miners. I think that there's this Bitcoin mentality that you have to try something that has been around for the longest time and is most battle tested, as opposed to something which is more avant-garde and experimental. But I can acknowledge that technically zero knowledge proofs being implemented with the virtual machine are superior. They bring some novel ways to do everything, and they do it more efficiently and in ways which benefit the base layer. But do you see this getting adoption within the Bitcoin community? Because this is what it's all about, right? Do you see users coming to do sovereign rollups?
Mm-hmm. I can say I don't support drive chains because the difference is too clear to me. Let's talk about the end goal of the rollups and the drive chains. There are some 2 VIPs that needs to activate drive chains, and there is no VIP yet to activate fully trustless rollups. Let's say we have a VIP called OP Start Verify that can verify start proofs on the base layer. And imagine this, right now I'm talking about this scenario. If you go with the drive chains, then you are moving your BTC to another external chain that you are trusting miners of that chain, even though they are merge mines. There is nothing prevent miners to steal from another chain and keep from this chain, for example. In the drive chain, you are trusting miners to look at the hash correctly. I don't know how they can find the hash without validating or having a node of that chain. They need to vote on the main chain about the correctness of the sidechain. But with OP Start Verify, you already verify all the blockchain inside the Bitcoin blockchain with every single node on the Bitcoin network. So every node, if we have this OP Start Verify, is verifying the rollup, the Citrea, let's say in this scenario, they are verifying Citrea in their computer. In the other case, only miners care and vote on drive chains. And drive chains security are different assumptions. They might have poor security, they might have great security, but rollups, 99% of the rollups, if they are not some kind of fraud or scam, they provide equivalent security with the base layer. This is why they are pretty clearly superior, I can say.
Hello, Bitcoin Takeover listeners. This is Victor from IVPN. We could have produced the flashy ad with lofty claims, but we like the straightforward approach, so I'll just stick to the basics here. How are we different from other VPN providers? IVPN is run by Bitcoiners. We've been accepting Bitcoin since before the block size wars, now using BTC-based server, and also accept Lightning payments. We also aim for radical transparency supported by open source software, regular audits, and a transparent team. And finally, there's absolutely no KYC with IVPN. We don't ask for an email or any other personal information when you sign up. If you would like to test our service, send an email to trial@ivpn.net to receive a 30-day IVPN Pro voucher.
Hello, I'm Vlad, and I have been a user of IVPN Pro for longer than 1 year. What I like the most about it is being able to use 7 devices at the same time and using the multi-hop feature to connect to 2 different servers of my choosing at the same time. Also, your account consists of a randomly generated string of letters and numbers which are not linked to your email address, bank account, or real-life identity. You top it up with a Lightning payment and you get instant confirmation at low fees. Definitely get your 30-day IVPN Pro trial by sending an email to trial@ivpn.net. Make sure you use a burner email address that you probably already have for trolling. So you said unless these rollups are a fraud or a scam, how can the rollups be fraudulent?
I can deploy some rollup if I'm like fraudulent person. I can claim that this is a rollup. I can claim that there's a BitVM running underlying this system, but like BitVM is just a taproot script and it is not visible to every participant. And I might just implement one-of-one multisig that I can steal all the money, for example. This is a bad construction, and this is, I think, easily distinguishable from others. I didn't pronounce it correctly, but there is a possibility that you can construct a fraudulent rollup, but you can also construct a fraudulent sidechain, for example. This is not something to compare, but eventually the rollups are getting verified on the Bitcoin network by nodes, and the right chains are externally validated, and only some hash that I don't know where we can find it or where we can validate it is put into Bitcoin using miners.
Yeah, I think the fundamental difference, if I was to do a very broad simplification of the whole debate, I think the difference between drive chains and rollups is that drive chains maximize politics, and it's all about humans deciding. And you have the miners who enforce and protect these sidechains, which are gonna get extra features, and they can be actually cool if we assume a benevolent environment. And then you have rollups which maximize cryptography, and they're much more technical. It's more difficult for you to verify what's going on. You can't go by reputation systems or whatever, or maybe you can, correct me if I'm wrong. But it's not as much about human politics, it's more about cryptography and computation.
I think it is much more easily verifiable. I definitely agree with the cryptographic security. Rollups are secured cryptographically using zero-knowledge proofs and optimistic rollups with fraud proofs. But the verification is much more easier than the drive chain. If you have a Bitcoin node today without a soft fork or stuff, you can verify the Citrea because it is just some proof, and you have some offline program that is around 1 megabyte that you can verify a proof. You can put the proof as input and you can get 1 or 0, true or false output. With drive chains, you need to put a node, you need to verify every single block on that drive chain, and you need to make sure that drive chain works correctly, and it worked correctly so far. I think rollups are much more easily verifiable with this light nodes and zero-knowledge stuff, other than all the sidechains, not specifically for drive chains. This is valid for all the sidechains.
There's another mention in this TLDR section which says Citrea uses BTC as a native token to avoid confusion and improve on the on-ramp and off-ramp UX. Citrea native BTC is named CBTC in Citrea. So there's gonna be a token for Bitcoin?
We are using Bitcoin as native token. There is no like Citrea token or stuff. We are just putting Bitcoin in the BitVM contract, and we are minting Bitcoin on the rollup. But we could like call it BTC because it is the same BTC and very secure with cryptography. But we decided to call it CBTC to avoid confusion while you are making atomic swaps, for example. If you need to do atomic swap between the main chain and the Citrea, you need to like choose, okay, this is BTC, this is BTC. To avoid the confusion, we just named it as CBTC, but it is the BTC on the main chain with the most secure peg so far.
It's almost CBDC.
That's something unfortunate, but yeah, it is CBTC. It is definitely not CBDC.
No, I like it. We're taking on their branding. It's cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think TL3 is finished, right? I couldn't recall what we write, but I think it's finished.
Yeah, we finished the TLDR part, and I do see that you have a section for future research with plans that you have. And the stuff that you have listed here is multi-VM approach, which says that Citrea is designed to be compatible with interoperable multiple virtual machines. It runs inside the generic Stark ZK VM, meaning any virtual machine can be implemented and will produce execution proof. Initially, Citrea implements EVM, however, implementing different VMs like WASM or SVM is possible thanks to its future-proof design. Why would you want to change the virtual machine system?
I don't want to change the virtual machine system, but I want to support every single virtual machine that is secure and used by developers. So EVM, like we said, has secured billions of dollars and has lots of developers. But for example, Rust has much more developers than EVM. So if we can support WASM VM, which is a WebAssembly VM, we can support Rust smart contracts. And our architecture benefits RISC-0, which is a RISC-V architecture-based Stark ZK VM. And ZK nerds probably know about this. And we are running EVM inside this VM. And we can run any VM that can compile to the similar computation system. We can also proof that VM. So if we can implement Rust VM, WASM VM in the future, we can support Rust smart contracts interoperable with EVM smart contracts so that we can onboard billions of developers to Bitcoin.
Okay, that makes sense. It makes much more sense now that you explained it. The other future research endeavor is Decentralized Sequencer Network, and it says that Citrea contributors are exploring solutions to help multiple sequencers in a consensus without affecting latency and finality. One possible approach to implement a proof-of-stake-like layer, but only for sequencing blocks. The source of truth for users will always be zero-knowledge proofs in Bitcoin. Decentralized sequencing layer will reduce the short-term trust to sequencer to protect the ordering, as the ordering will be finalized on the sequencing layer in a single shot. There are several consensus mechanisms that are being experimented, such as Comet BFT, Hot Stuff, and Monad BFT. This sounds a lot like what Robert Linus said, that he wants to put proof of stake on top of proof of work.
He mentioned about stake chains, I think you're mentioning about, right? Stake chains are like proof of stake on top of Bitcoin. But what we are doing is fundamentally different than stake chains. We are still putting a stake chain on top of Bitcoin, you can say, but the stake chain is not the chain that determines the correct block transactions or correct blocks. It only helps with the sequencing, like I said about decentralized sequencer, multi-sequencer network. It only prevents that some sequencer censor some transaction or they just ignore transactions. It has a fair ordering, but all the blocks produced on that stake chain, it will be proved with ZK proofs and verified with Bitcoin. So essentially, this is like a stake chain, but it is only responsible for sequencing blocks, not correctness of the blocks or not finality of the block. It will only help us with the coordination of multi-sequencer network.
Something which I understand and has been listed in your future research list is trustless atomic swaps. And this was, I think, the original vision for the Lightning Network, that it's going to be a highway between blockchains and you're going to swap assets between each other. And I guess this is for the purpose of swapping CBTC, which is Citrea Bitcoin, for other assets. and this can have some benefits, I guess.
Yes, in BitVM, like Robin and like the Karsten, the Cartesi team, they made significant contributions to BitVM, and we are right now building a ZK in BitVM. This is a great improvement, but BitVM has similar trade-offs that I mentioned before. For example, in BitVM, we only support like fixed and large amount of BTC. So that, for example, if you have, for example, 0.1 BTC, you cannot use the BitVM bridge, but you need to onboard to the rollup yourself. You can just do some atomic swap between someone who wants to exit from Citrea. So if we enable this kind of atomic swap, you can, with any amount, you can just go into Citrea, go out from Citrea in a quick manner without waiting all the finality. I think like Liquid and Rootstock has similar things, but this will be specific for the CBTC and BTC integration.
Yeah, and there's also a section about a Lightning integration with trustless atomic swaps between Citrea and the Lightning network, which is being researched.
It's the same thing.
Because Lightning network has been declared dead and abandoned multiple times and flawed and whatever. They said it has some, I guess, how should I put it, fatalistic bugs that can be exploited at a higher level. And what should I say? It seems like a lot of layer 2 proposals have come along, but it seems like also all of them want to work with the Lightning network. So it's probably here to stay, right?
Yes, like I think there are several approaches that is better than Lightning, like Arc or ZK coins or Robin. But essentially Lightning network is here, even though with the bugs and like critical stuff, people are using it for like micropayments. And all we need to do for Citrea is onboard people to Citrea so that they can experience the foundation of the world's finance using BTC. To make it possible, we will onboard everyone using Lightning, using BTC as main network, or using Bitcoin, bridge Bitcoin to with other side chains. We will onboard everyone, and we are working towards all the integration that made this possible.
From a user perspective, like someone like myself wants to use Citrea after its launch, what's the user experience gonna look like?
Onboarding is much more easier than Lightning because you don't need to have on-chain transaction to onboard. For example, if CBTC has some withdrawal from some exchanges, which definitely will be, or some on-ramp or off-ramp applications, you can just copy your EVM address, which starts with 0x, and you can request your CBTC to that address, and it will come to you in the Citrea. There is no Bitcoin L1 transaction, so there is no high fee stuff, or like there's no inbound liquidity, those kind of things. You can instantly get onboarded with the Citrea. But if you want to explicitly lift your Bitcoin L1 UTX or BTC, you need to use atomic swaps, you need to use Lightning integration, or you need to use the BitVM bridge. But other than that, onboarding is pretty easy using the onboarding solutions that we will have.
Okay, but is it going to be simple for the average user to get into rollups?
Yes, because in like today's, for example, in centralized exchanges, lots of people buy some ETH or some other tokens that use for alt L1s. They just instantly withdraw their money with a like fresh opened account, and they are using it. Citrea will be the same, but it will use BTC.
Okay, so this is mostly about exchange withdrawals.
Yes,
is there going to be a desktop wallet or something that you could download on day one?
You can use Citrea with every other Ethereum wallet that is currently available. For example, MetaMask is the most popular one, has like millions of users. You can use MetaMask in Citrea directly. We will have like some other non-custodial applications. We have several cool wallet projects that build on other EVM ecosystem, and we will onboard to Citrea. But you can use any EVM wallet for onboarding and using Citrea.
So why is it Ethereum compatible? And
it is EVM compatible. That is why you can use those wallets. It is EVM compatible so that you can use your ledger, you can use your, for example, other hardware modules also. That's a great benefit for an L2 actually.
And how do you connect this to your full node in Bitcoin?
Bitcoin full node doesn't need to have this connection because you are using Citrea and you are connecting to a Citrea node, either a light node or full node. You will connect your wallet to the Citrea node, and Citrea will collect all these transactions and put them into Bitcoin. And if you want to externally verify, you need to put a Citrea node next to your Bitcoin node so that you can verify the ZK proofs. But for using it, you can either connect to an RPC endpoint of Citrea, or you can create a full node of Citrea and you can connect to that.
Yeah, I did see in the characteristics section of your documentation that it says Citrea blockchain, and I did not think about it as a blockchain up until this point.
It's a blockchain because it has like simple things. It has transactions, it has blocks, it has a blockchain. But what makes it like ZK rollup is we are proving the blockchain with ZK proofs and verifying another blockchain inside the Bitcoin. But essentially, they are all blockchains.
So if it's a blockchain of its own, how is this different from a sidechain?
Because sidechain is a blockchain that cannot get verified in Bitcoin because it cannot get compressed with ZK proofs or fraud proofs, because essentially it has its own consensus that has validators, miners, nodes, but Rollup doesn't have any consensus. It shares the consensus of the L1. So that and blocks are being made with like ZK friendly in our ecosystem, so that the blocks are proved with zero knowledge proofs and verified in Bitcoin. You cannot verify any other sidechain in Bitcoin if they are not a ZK rollup or optimistic rollup.
Right. So what are the requirements to run your own Citrea node?
We have a simple binary that you can put next to your Bitcoin node to run it. But if you have a light user, you don't need all the transaction data. You can just, like I said, you can create your light node by just downloading the software and running it next to your Bitcoin light clients within your smartwatch, within your mobile phone, anything you want.
Yeah, but I was curious, since Bitcoin is all about sovereignty and being in control of everything. What are the computational requirements? Like, do you need a high-end computer, or does it work on a Raspberry Pi?
If you are putting a light client, it doesn't need any computation. Like I said, it only shares, you only need a Bitcoin block headers that you can pull from zero-sync proofs, or you can pull from Bitcoin light clients. But if you are going to put a full node, sorry about that. I'm still sick, so if you are going to create a full node of Citrea, you will need to have a Bitcoin node, and it is I think maybe same requirements with the Bitcoin node, small storage, same kind of CPU requirements, and that's all.
SatoChip provides open source solutions based on smart card to assist you in your crypto journey. The hardware wallet lets you safely store your private keys within the tamper-proof chip memory, while Sato Dime allows you to create a barrier cold storage in 2 clicks thanks to its mobile app. And SeedKeeper is the ultimate hardware device to store and manage your seed phrases. Become self-custody with SatoChip. Your keys, your coins.
Yeah, I found this very cool diagram which shows how transactions get broadcast to the mempool. They go into a sequencer, and the L2 blocks go to nodes, and they become zero knowledge proofs that get embedded into Bitcoin as ordinal inscriptions.
Yes, that's a cool diagram.
Let me see if I can share the screen to show this. It's this one, or it should be this one. Sure. Okay, do you see this?
Okay. Yes, I can see it. Yes. So we have several diagrams on this document. I can also go through all of them. This is how transaction is going to look like. Like, you are sending your transaction to a sequencer. In the future, there will be sequencers, lots of sequencer, and they are creating blocks from these transactions, and they are broadcasting blocks to the nodes and provers. And if you are a full node, you can instantly like accept this block and make it final. And after batching some like maybe 100 blocks in the prover creates a ZK proofs and inscribe the proof to the Bitcoin so that your full node can pull from Bitcoin and make sure that the transaction or block received from sequencer is correct.
And there's also a section about zero confirmations. There's this cultural custom in Bitcoin that you should not trust something until you get at least one on-chain confirmation, and 6 is considered to be conservatively secure. How would this work with zero confirmations?
Yeah, like I talked about, before a block is mined, transaction ordering is trusted to the sequencer, not the validity because it gets proved with ZK proofs, but ordering of the transaction is trusted to the sequencer. We will mitigate this with decentralized sequencer network, but until that date, the sequencer has responsible to keep the ordering same until a block is mined, similar to ARC.
Yeah, and I found another diagram that I think is worth displaying for those of you who
Your screen is gone right now. I can't see it.
Yeah, I switched so our faces become visible.
Okay.
Now let me share once again. And this is for Bitcoin settlement with trust minimized BTC bridge. Citrea is the first universal L2 that has trust minimized BTC bridge. And what's happening here? The user locks a peg in UTXO and sends signatures and pre-image to mint to Citrea and receives from the operator and the end verifier. It collects pre-signed transactions.
Yes, essentially you lock up UTXO. This architecture might change a little bit after the launch maybe, but in the current proof of concept, you are locking some UTXO. You are collecting a pre-signed transactions from an verifier and an operator so that you can make sure that this UTXO will get you CBTC, and you can send this signature some pre-image that can spend pegging UTXO to Citrea so that you will have your CBTC on the Citrea. This is what BitVM flow looks like. And once you want to withdraw from Citrea, you are just triggering some transaction on Citrea that emits some events and says, okay, these are the withdrawals right now requested. And ZK proof is inscribed to Bitcoin so that there's a withdrawal route, a Merkle route of withdrawals. And operator of Citrea, which is like our operator, covers the withdrawals from its pockets, gives to the user so that user can leave immediately after the proof is finalized on the base layer. And after several blocks, our operator goes to the BitVM contract and say, okay, I covered these withdrawals from my pockets. These are all the withdrawals. I covered them, all of them, showing the Bitcoin Litecoin proofs. And it says, okay, I want to cover my cost from this pegging UTXOs. And it got all the UTXOs, and this flow is continuous to infinitely. But if operator says, okay, these are the withdrawals, I did these withdrawals from my pocket, and if operator is lying here, if it says, okay, I did cover this, but if it didn't cover one of the withdrawals, one of the verifier can say, okay, you are trying to steal the Bitcoin bridge money. This is a fraud proof showing that, and the operator stake will get slashed. This is why BitVM is secure and trust minimized, because if one party among all these unverified is secure, they can keep the peg secure.
Okay, let's backtrack a bit and keep it a bit simple. I'm a Bitcoin user. I realize that the fees are about $20 if I want to get included in the next block. And that's also what it costs me to open a Lightning channel if I want to make multiple transactions. And maybe that I don't want to get on Lightning because I have lesser coverage by ATMs and by sellers and whoever accepts, merchants that accept Bitcoin. They don't have Lightning nodes and they don't accept Lightning. So I want to use Bitcoin. So what is your pitch for this type of user? Why should they use your type of rollups?
Because like I said, essentially rollups are shares the same security with Bitcoin in a much cheaper and faster manner. So instead of Lightning, if you can create a payment solution on Citrea, can onboard lots of merchants and people that just create some light node of Citrea, which is several megabytes, so that they can send and receive CBTC on the rollup, and they can validate that they got the money or they got the BTC, and they, for example, sent the BTC with zero knowledge proofs easily. So there is no storage or network requirements. There is just some megabytes of programs that you can verify the result of the transaction.
Okay, but you explained the technical benefits, not the financial ones. Someone's gonna pay $20.
No, it is definitely cheaper than the Bitcoin main chain. In terms of sat rate and dollar cost of the transaction, it is definitely much more cheaper than the Bitcoin itself, and it can also be further improved with several other layers on top of Citrea. We designed Citrea to be the DeFi and liquidity and the settlement layer on the Bitcoin, so that people can, for example, there's some people that wants to build private payment rollup on top of Citrea. So it will be L3, layer 3 on top of Citrea that can facilitate private payments, in a cent or cost of cents, or 10 cents. So that this will be the application of, for example, private payments. You can do instant payments, maybe just porting Lightning on top of Citrea. You can use Citrea in a regular way. You can send CBTC around. There are indefinite things you can do with Citrea.
Okay, but you still didn't mention anything about costs. How much less are they expected to pay? And also, can they send to another Bitcoin transaction? Because that's another user experience impediment. Does it have to be on Citrea, the recipient of the transaction? Or can they get into the ZK rollups and save on fees, and the final destination is somebody else's Bitcoin address?
No, that's not possible. You cannot send to Bitcoin address using Citrea because CBTC, you need to peg out the CBTC and you need to send the BTC. This is the same cost with the Bitcoin main chain. So you can send people using Citrea only. Even if they are not onboarded yet, you can still send. They don't need to be online. They don't need to have watchtowers, etc. You can send the money immediately, but you cannot send on the Bitcoin. And I can say in terms of transaction cost, it will be 10 times of cheaper, if not 20. And with the further improvements like volition mode and L3s, it will be 100x cheaper than the Bitcoin main chain itself.
So transactions are gonna need to take place within the Citrea ecosystem to benefit from all of these features.
Yes, that's the being a rollup. You are moving up to the layer with same security, but you are using that layer. If you touch to the base layer, you need to pay the fees of the base layer, of course. But unlike Lightning, you don't have to touch to the base layer. That's the thing.
Yeah, but for merchant adoption or something like this, you're gonna need to convince all the merchants and all the payments processors to add Citrea.
Yeah, that's correct.
So in terms of adoption, it doesn't help that much unless you have very good marketing and are able to scale this not just computationally, but also socially to make people accept it.
I think it is really correlated. If you can onboard people with mobile phone application that can serve as node, if you can onboard people with smartwatch application that can serve as node, that's trivial to onboard them without requiring all the watchtowers, Bitcoin nodes and Lightning nodes and stuff. It is all about requirements, hardware requirements, and scalability of the system.
So how does Citrea make money off of this system? Is there any fee collection environment or something?
In the beginning of that, Citrea sequencer will collect fees, and like I said, 99% of the fees will went to the Bitcoin-based layer as a data availability fee to put all this huge data to Bitcoin. And other than that, the rest of the money collected in sequencer, some of them will go to the prover for ZK proof cost because it's a little bit costly operation to run this kind of machines, and the rest of the money will go to the sequencer. Once we enable the decentralized sequencer network, the revenue will share among all these sequencers who propose blocks and get accepted.
Okay, I think this was an important mention because there needs to be some sort of incentive for people to run on Citrea. And if they run a node, let's say, do they collect fees, or is there any incentive for people to support the ecosystem?
I don't know like any blockchain that shares revenue with nodes, because if you have a Bitcoin node, but you cannot get any like Bitcoin miner fees, right? You can have Lightning node, you cannot get any Lightning fees. There is no Lightning fees, like Lightning service provider fees, and you cannot benefit from them. In the Citrea, that is the same. If you have a node, no, you are just like making the network secure and making your money secure using it non-custodially. If you are attending to the block producing by being a sequencer or being a prover, then you are getting incentivized.
Well, I disagree with you there, because if you run a Lightning node and you open your channels yourself and you have liquidity, you're going to be routing transactions. If you open channels only with the LSP, then yes, they're going to be the ones collecting the transaction fees. But I have been running a routing node for about 1 year, and I know what it's like. It's not easy. It's not convenient. Usually you don't get back your investment unless you're famous and people really want to connect to you. But it's still possible. And
yeah, that's correct. I missed that point totally.
I was trying to figure out what's the incentive for people to support Citrea.
I think it is like non-custodially and cheaply owning BTC, and like doing much more than you can do with the base layer. If you are just holding your BTC, that benefits to no one. Bitcoin itself also, you are not paying any fees, you are not contributing to the hash rate, you are not contributing to the security budgets. If you are just holding BTC, that's nothing, because Satoshi designed this system to be used. And we are right now building a layer that can use the Bitcoin with much more different capabilities. We can build privacy applications, we can build swap applications, we can build lending applications. You can even build, like, if you are too crazy, you can build a game application easily using the Turing-complete smart contracts, using Bitcoin as gas token. These are the possibilities that you can do with Citrea with the same level of security with Bitcoin, and you can create a node to non-custodial own all these beauties of the Citrea. That's the whole point of like Bitcoin node and the Citrea node.
So honestly, are you trying to appeal to the WBTC crowd, the people who are using this wrapped system on Ethereum, so that they can get the same sort of service and the same features on something that uses Bitcoin and requires less trust?
That's definitely correct. Like, while building this system, I realized that I am building a lot for myself. So my co-founders, like, we were like doing some chatting with them and like drinking tea in Turkey. So I was talking about, okay, I want to use my Bitcoin with finance, not for just payment. I'm doing payments in my daily life, even though it's like forbidden in Turkey. But I want to do finance with BTC, right? But I don't want to move my BTC to some custodial solution. I don't want to go with like Rootstock BTC. I don't want to go with WBTC or all the stuff on the Ethereum side. I want to use Bitcoin network. I want to use finance. I want to use it non-custodially. These are my requirements, and we end up building a rollup. So if you want to like use your Bitcoin in finance, which makes like indefinite things of possibilities that you can do with EVM smart contracts and BTC. And if you want to own it non-custodially, and if you want to contribute to Bitcoin networks long-term health, Citrea is like the first and only solution right now.
It was definitely an interesting process to go from the technology to backtrack to how it works, and then try to figure out how it's going to be used and who's the target audience for this. But now it makes more sense. I think we did
reverse. Like, we did reverse. People usually talk about the use case first and what's technical. We started deep and technical, but right now we are figuring out who should use it. Yeah.
But it's certainly interesting. And I was going to ask you, I guess by the time people are going to be listening to this, there's going to be some sort of product out there. What is your recommended way for people to test Citrea?
So while this is being like broadcasted online, there won't be like testnet yet, public testnet yet. There will be an internal developer net. And like if you want to have applications, want to deploy on a BTC rollup, if you want to deploy your infrastructure on BTC rollup, you can get in touch with us. I think the doc section will have all the necessary links that you need. And the roadmap is clear. In the next month, we will open source all the code base, including the BitVM bridge, which everyone asking me about. Every sidechain wants to have like this kind of bridge without like doing all the technical work. So we will open source it, and we want to people think about our system and use our system. And hopefully in the April, we will have a public testnet so that you can try Citrea, you can deploy apps on Citrea, you can make payments on Citrea. That's the roadmap for now.
Yeah, and how can people follow the project and figure out stuff in which they can maybe contribute to it?
Yes, the webpage, like you said, is Citrea.xyz. If you visit the webpage, you can see the documentation section, the docs.citrea.xyz. And on Twitter, we are Citrea_xyz. You can follow all the process here, and we will have necessary Discord links that you can redirect to chat with us, ask questions to us. And I think my Twitter name will be on like this publishing somewhere in Twitter, so that you can also message me about your applications and your experimentation that you want to do on Citrea.
Thank you very much, Orkun. I'm not sure if I have any more questions at this time. I think I figured it out finally. I spent this morning looking at the docs, but now it finally clicks. It makes sense for me. I understand what it really is and how it works.
After like all the broadcasts with Paul, it must be hard in the morning looking the documentation of a rollup.
Yeah, it was challenging, especially since we did vodka shots last night.
Okay, it looks fun. Yeah.
This is Bitcoin. It's supposed to be fun. We're supposed to...
It's definitely fun. Like, I'm too excited. Once like we started with ordinal stuff, doing a wallet, it was pretty excited. We like got attacked by some groups. Like we got DDoS, we fixed the problem. We realized that we can do DeFi on Bitcoin. Right now we are building Citrea, and it is, I think, one of the top projects that's coming lately on Bitcoin. And I'm like surrounded by everyone. I want to do private swaps on Citrea. I want to like support Citrea. I want to invest in Citrea. I'm too excited, and like we have much more things to do. I'm excited for the Bitcoin's future.
You know, ordinal inscriptions seem to some people evil, but they opened up the gates for so many interesting use cases. And you are the first project to actually do zero-knowledge proof rollups using this technology. Yes. So it's exciting. Who knows what's going to come up next and how we're going to be using Bitcoin in the future. Seems like we are still in the early days, as cliche as this sounds. This is open for innovation, and the way that we use Bitcoin today can radically change in the next 5-10 years. So thank you for doing this type of research.
I'm happy to be here. Like this is the first thing we record about Citrea and talk details in depth. I only tweet offline about the details, but we are talking in depth, and it is a pretty technical talk. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I love this conversation. I learned a lot from you. I hope it was reciprocal to some extent, because actually it wasn't. I don't think you learned anything from me, except for maybe next time you should start with the use cases and then get technical.
No, I did learn a lot of things about like what should we put to the docs, for example. You ask about me onboarding, you ask about me wallets, you ask about me CBTC, why this is needed, why it is not BTC. And I got lots of feedback in this podcast, and this will be fixed before the launch, I can say.
Well, I'm grateful, and I hope we're going to hear much more about Citrea in the future.
Yes,
and we can do another interview when you have like 1 million users and you have drained WBTC liquidity and all of that.
It won't take that long. Yeah, it won't take that long.
All of that Bitcoin is coming to Citrea. I hope that happens, because it's a much better setup. It requires less trust, and it has much better scalability compared to, you know, WBTC is on Ethereum, and Ethereum doesn't really scale. So
Yes, let's scale the Bitcoin. Let's use Bitcoin. Let's contribute to Bitcoin. That's all we want.
Thank you very much, Orkun. And how can people follow you personally to keep up with what you're doing?
It is 0x_Orkun. All I talk about Citrea right now, but that's because of my excitement. If you have any question or want to discuss something with me, you can reach out to me on Twitter with that handle.
Okay, really nice talking with you, and never stop building on Bitcoin.
Thank you. Thank you a lot.